Let's go.
Welcome to the Soul Fam podcast, where we expand your personal universe. I'm Diana Marquetta, and in each episode, Soul Fam co-founder, co-creator Lexi Strummer-Solden and I interview the world's most rising and longtime experts in consciousness, spirituality, entertainment, healing, and science. From Earth's dimensions and dimensions way, way beyond. On the Soul Fam podcast, our frequencies are high and your heart chakras will open as these powerful voices of today share cutting-edge research, profound experiences, and valuable knowledge for your world in this out-of-this-world, thought-provoking, envelope-pushing interviews that could only take place right here on the Soul Fam podcast. Welcome to the Soul Fam podcast. Today we have a dear friend of mine, Seph from Talk to the Angels, who is coming to us live from Brazil. Seph and I have known each other for quite a while, and he is a very clear channel between this earthly place and the heavenly realms. He is involved in quantum activations for we earthlings by a connection with the angels. Seph, I was hoping you would introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to these days.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for having me. I love how it seems like our connectivity, all of us, like you and I, and you and someone else, me and someone else, this connectivity is all divinely orchestrated to bring in the good that's coming. And I know in this episode, we get to cover a little bit of the not so good that we're seeing in the world and find the good in it, or finding the guidance at least in it, and to bring some peace to the audience. So that's definitely our objective. And the work that I've been doing lately is all about bringing people into activation with their highest levels of being. And it's funny because you said we earthlings, because truly we're actually not. We're multidimensional beings that are having a human experience. And this transition is literally about eliminating the false belief that we're anything other than our multidimensional self. So the work that I'm doing, the work that you're doing by having this podcast, the work that we're all doing together is activating and calibrating each other for the new earth. And that comes in many forms, whether it's the one-on-one sessions. I've been teaching the classes again about angel communication, accessing the Akashic records with the angels, and of course, the tarot class, which is a little bit more than just a class about telling the future. It's all about accessing higher conscious levels. So we get to stay busy creating content, and all for the benefit of those who get to consume that, which is an activation and a calibration. And I've been all over the world. I'm in Brazil now, but I have found a second home in Hawaii, or actually third, because Sedona is my second, Southern California is my first. And I'm being guided to go to Portugal and a few other places because they have activation portals. And it's interesting because when we're in these beautiful roles of service to the light, we get called to these activation portals so that we can calibrate with something. And then when we turn around as a broadcast beacon, we get to create a channel for that particular frequency that we calibrate in these activation points.
So are you in Brazil to activate or to lay down connect with some grid there?
I'm here for a multitude of reasons. One, I'm married to a Brazilian, and we're in the process of getting a visa for my spouse. And then on the other hand, of course, in this case, I'm also bringing in some of the new classes, such as the Akashic Records course, and also creating content while being here. And in some cases, we come in and we find an opportunity to be a beacon of light. So in Brazil, it's more like being a beacon of light and bringing it into a different frequency. Because I find it funny that I went to Hawaii and Sedona and calibrated with a high frequency and then came to Brazil. And what I'm doing here while I'm planted here, and it's kind of a synchronicity of the path, is to be able to bring the calibration here in kind of a Trojan horse fashion, I guess you could say, because I'm here for another reason.
Right.
But we know the universe, there's more than one reason why we're doing something. And of course, there's more than one reason why we get to meet each other and be here today.
Exactly. It's very interesting. I felt very strongly earlier this week that we needed to connect and that it was important for you to be on this podcast right at this time. And so I reached out, and fortunately you were available for a brief time because I know you have to go to a live event very soon. But I felt that your work with angels was incredibly important for whoever's willing to listen, and even those who aren't, to get a sense of it and to hear your messages right now.
Yes. It's interesting because with the angels, I've been working with them for 20 years, and I love the relationship with the angels. It makes perfect sense that we have these guides and these guardians. And if they are there to guide us, then why shouldn't we be able to hear from them, especially if our hearing from them equates to guidance? It makes perfect sense to me, right? And that's one of the things that's in the mainstream that has been very carefully crafted so that we would think it's weird or odd. I also find that people tend to want to associate the angels with religion, and they're not associated with religion at all. We have to remember there is no religion on the other side. And so they're part of the quantum field, which is a multi-dimensional field of creativity, one that you could say is the mind of the creator. But in much the same way that I guess we could say God wouldn't have to go to church, right, or to synagogue or anything like that, because God is God, on the other side, we're also a piece of that. So to a certain degree, it's an interesting part of the process to detach the angels from dogmatic beliefs and a structure around spirituality. They're actually more helpful when we embrace a non-structured relationship with our spirituality. And it's not to say that we can't still practice our religions while we expand into the vast array of non-linear spirituality. If we want, we could do both, or we could do one or the other. It's our choice. But they're not necessarily bound to that. So I always like to make the joke that they didn't come to tell us to go to church more or to synagogue or the mosque. They didn't come to tell us to do that. They didn't come to teach us how to play the harp. But our directive in life is to remember that we are a creator and then express that creativity while in the physical body. That is the number one reason that we are in the body, that we left that multidimensional realm to become a physical being in this body. And right now, especially, we're in a transition which is bringing in consciousness into every construct in the world. So every construct that we think that serves humanity, such as governments or money, banking, religion, all that kind of stuff, it's all in a linear form and isn't quite as expansive as the creator. Well, we're becoming more expansive because that's who we are deep down. And of course, those constructs aren't heart-centered or quantum or infinite. We're stepping into a more infinite and heart-centered expression of ourselves. So one of the things that will change when we create the new earth is that the form of escrow, I guess you could say, that we use to move goods and services around the planet. Right now, it's money, which has no heart in it whatsoever. And we will find a system as we become more heart-centered, as we learn to love each other and be in unity with each other. We will find a system that has that love. There's absolutely no reason. Speaking of being in Brazil, I walk out of my apartment. There's absolutely no reason for anybody to be laying there homeless without food in the park. There is plenty of resources on the planet. But the old system that we have that doesn't have heart or consciousness in it doesn't care. But the people of this planet, such as you and I and your listeners, we do. We do care about everybody in this world, right? And so this is a transition from going and operating from a linear and heartless conditions in all of the constructs. And we're going into something, though it may not look like we are, we have to break down the old systems first, which is the part that is really difficult right now. And to that, one of the things that I got from the angels that's super exciting is they gave me kind of a way of seeing this transition, which makes perfect sense. They say that this transition has 3 seasons, much like our own personal transformation. And the 3 seasons, the first season or stage or phase is the initiating phase, and that is the awakening phase or the revelations phase, revealing. And this is where, if it's a personal transformation, we might say, ooh, I'm capable of something greater than this. I want to quit my old corporate job and I want to create a business around serving others or creating something or doing something else. But for the world, collectively, we're having a revelation, which is, wait a minute, we're not these separate little humans that are subjugated to these old systems. We're actually sovereign, multidimensional beings. And so the next phase of this is the purification or purging phase. And this is what has everyone activated now, because we're at the end of the awakening, or let's say the revelations phase, and we're entering into the purging and purification phase. And so everything that you see that looks daunting, foreboding, that wants to promote a doom and gloom outcome is actually purely designed for the destruction of any construct that doesn't fit into a heart-centered reality, a completely heart-centered reality. And so it goes this purging and purification phase, and then followed by the expansion, which is the new earth. So right now we're still in a bit of the revelation phase, but we're at the beginning of the purification phase. And the way that they say this, which is kind of cool, and we can't relate to this being from Southern California, but let's say you live in Washington, D.C., and it's turning into spring. It could be 90 degrees one day and then snow the next, right? When winter's turning into spring. So as these seasons are changing, there's still an overlap. It's not a clear cut, like we're out of this phase and into this phase, like a season. So the season has a kind of a melt in that middle. So we're right in this sweet spot where we're seeing the purification already beginning, and there's still revelation that's happening. And I say this because this is meant to give the listeners peace, because it's all part of the plan to create the new earth. And the peace comes from realizing that the scenarios that we don't want to see and that we feel fearful to experience are actual part of a grander design that gets us to the new earth.
That's hard to, I understand. I think my sense is it's hard for communities at large to grasp what actually has to happen in order for that to take place. And how could that be true? Because some things are obviously shocking on one level or another. So that sense of peace, I think we're all grasping for at this time on this planet, and hopeful, but I'm curious what the angels say about being reassuring at this time.
Yes. Here's where we're going to find the peace. we're going to find the peace in the increase in unity that we're seeing now. Because when we're part of a community, one of the predominating word in community is unity. And when we're back in that unified form, and when we're in that stage, guess what we have? We have synergy and we have connectivity. And when we have each other, we feel the peace come over us. And it's not because we know that united we can protect each other, but when we're united, we're all one soul that appears to be separated. And when we rejoin that unity, we become part of the reality that we have the ability to create reality. And even though we don't think about it in those steps, it's something that just viscerally comes over our bodies. We just feel a sense of peace. I created a conscious community online that's not a monetized adventure. It's literally because it needs to happen at this point in the world. And for those who are listening to this podcast, there is this sense of being awakened consciously and seeing others who don't quite understand that we create our reality or that we have the power to create the reality that we want to live in and all of those other things. It's nice to have these conversations with other people that are in that more vast awareness, which is the higher mind. And accessing the higher mind, by the way, is one of the keys to peace. And that unity, the reason why it gives us peace is because it simultaneously gives us access to the higher mind. So being part of a community brings us peace. Peace is a doorway to the higher mind. When we're in the higher mind does not know the opposite of peace. It's only this left brain, our ego, or our human constructed mind. We have a higher mind that doesn't operate the same way. And the one that is not at peace is the human construct mind. But we have a higher mind that we get to access. That's why I do hypnotherapy. When I do readings or when I do classes, my main job is to calibrate people into the higher mind. And peace is the doorway to the higher mind. Unity and peace is the doorway to our collective higher mind. And from there, when we're in access to a higher mind, and you already know this already personally, when you do a meditation, you go in, something's bothering you. That's because your left brain is very activated. You go in and you do a meditation, something comes in, maybe it's a message that says everything's going to be okay. Maybe it's even a piece of guidance about what to do to make everything okay. And maybe it's even both. But something subtly shifts as you access the higher mind and you're in relationship with a part of yourself that doesn't know the opposite of peace. And I always love the beginning of A Course in Miracles. If you ever read the beginning of A Course in Miracles, and I won't have this down word for word, but it mentions that if God is creator, I guess you could say creator, God, whatever words we're comfortable with, if creator, source, God is all encompassing and is only the light, that anything that is the opposite of it cannot be contained in the same space as it if it's all encompassing. It uses much different words to say this, but I don't remember it to quote it. But the whole revelation of that is that if there is only the light and its opposite can't occupy the same space, then it has to be pure illusion. And if it is pure illusion, herein lies the peace of the mind of God. And that is what we access when we access the higher mind, is we're in that state of what's real and we rise above illusion. Even though when we're in this waking reality, what looks real to us is unthinkable wars, unthinkable hatred, unthinkable violence, unthinkable poverty. and all kinds of things, corruption and all of that that's going on in this world that is still systematized by a whole entire construct that lacks heart, which is the energy of the higher mind or the creator. And the angels really want us to know that by creating community and being with each other in love, we leave the illusion in our awareness, and that's where we begin to have the peace. Because when we have the peace, then we can do things that, as far fetched as this might sound, we can affect the situation all the way on the other side of the world, where there are things that are going on that we didn't push the buttons to make that happen.
Yeah.
And we can't stop it, right?
Can I ask a question? Because when I think of angels, well, I mean, for me, I think they come in three forms. This is just my opinion, which is animal form, right? Like embodied animal helper. Then I sort of picture maybe there's a angel in human form, and I picture those as the helpers that maybe come into your life for 30 seconds to save the day and then disappear. You never see them again. Nobody saw them but you. And then I think of the archangels, who are just massive. And for me, when I think of any of these angels, I wonder if they think we on Earth are doing a good job right now or not.
Well, there's a couple questions which are really good. So you can have the relationship that you want with angels, but you can include yourself in that too, because technically who we are is a being that's sort of like an iceberg. There's a piece of us that's still in the quantum field, which is the wholeness of everything, and a piece of us that appears to be in this separate world of lower frequency. Now, that the world that we appear to be in, that's separate and lower frequency, that world is pure illusion. Some people call it a video game, a hologram, all kinds of things, a dream of the soul. So there is only unity. There is a field of consciousness. Much like the ocean, if I take out a little glass of water that could represent the all of consciousness, I could pour a little glass. There's Diana, I could pour a little glass. There's Lexi, but then I can pour it back in and it's all part of the ocean again, but it's still part of the ocean when I took it out. And that's just like consciousness as well. And where angels come in is it's a higher level of awareness or consciousness. I refer to the angels as the angels, and they are all a unified field of consciousness that is here to guide us back into our fuller form. And that can take the form of a human being. It can take the form of an animal, but the whole entire reality is stitched together in a state of unity as it is part of something that's operating from a field of oneness, or the intelligence that operates it is a field of oneness. So the angels represent a higher layer of consciousness. I find my work to be very similar to Dolores Cannon's. Dolores Cannon is a hypnotherapist who accessed higher realms of consciousness by taking subjects into hypnosis. Now, I found it funny that I got guided into doing hypnosis and helping other people access the higher layers of consciousness or awareness. When Dolores went there, all of her subjects were accessing the same things. So when I first started channeling the angels, which is a field of awareness at a level of the highest intelligence, they started talking to me 20 years ago about what we're experiencing now, which is this transition into the new earth. Well, I didn't know about that. And for years, I kept that secret because that felt like something that was really weird. At the same time, I knew that it was right. I just knew it. Then I started connecting with other people who, for some reason, started talking to the angels as well, or other variations of forms that they created the identity with that form of intelligence. And when they did it, turns out they're getting the same information. Hey guys, you're in a transformational phase. And all these people are separated all along the way. And interesting enough, it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I discovered Dolores's work. And when I discovered her work, I was looking and I thought, wow, I wonder why I didn't discover this before. And then the angel said to me that if I would have gained that information from her work instead of from them, I wouldn't be able to work with them. Well, right after I acknowledged Dolores for the work that she did in being part of a band of leadership that came in, she came to me in a dream that night and said, I'm watching over you because you're doing similar work to I am. And she has come to me several times in dreams. A few times in hypnotherapy sessions, she's come in and said, hi, and I'm watching over you and guiding you. And I love that we're doing this work because all we're really doing is accessing a field of consciousness. And believe it or not, the only thing that trips us up about the angels is what religion did to the angels. And this is not a debate about religion, but they made them into something that they are not. So they have misled them, whether that was by design or an accident, I'm not here to say, but they did mislead us about who the angels are and the capacity that we have to have a relationship with this higher layer of consciousness. Now, do the angels look like winged beings? Absolutely not. We can actually visualize them that way because when we're on this side of the iceberg, what we want to really do is access the part of us that's on the other side of the iceberg that simultaneously still lives in the reality of perfection. And in some ways, the angel is actually us in our perfected form. So if you want to know who your guardian angel is, it's the same as your higher self. And it's that layer of you that is still firmly planted in the higher vibrating realms because we're in two places at one time.
Whoa. No, I'm like, what if I don't want it to be me? Nothing against me. I'm great on this side. I'm sure me on the other side is really fantastic. But is that why we create these different forms? Because it would be too weird if it was ourselves speaking to ourselves?
Believe it or not, it's only the part of us that is on this side that could imagine a dissonance between one and the other. And believe it or not, the part of you that exists in the multidimensional form presently, in present tense, is what wants to integrate into your current form. And that's what this transition is truly about. And that's where you're gaining the power to create greater reality and greater unity. And so being part of a connectivity with that greater aspect of yourself, there is a dissonance between who we are as a human and the relationship that we have with who we are in the world that we live in, and understanding that that was an illusion that we created for ourselves. But we understand that when we get to a certain place. When I am spending time here in Brazil, and my personal trainer that I started working out with here, somehow or another, guess what? We fell into this conversation, surprise, surprise. And he said the same thing. I've always thought of this as a simulation of a reality, and it is. And we can be in the simulation of reality as long as it pleases us to be in whatever that current form is. But then we get to this place where these limitations present themselves, and then we don't want to be those limitations. And in one of the hypnotherapy protocols that I do, I actually do what's called a higher self activation. And what that does is it gives us an opportunity to integrate the two selves, because they are two different selves. The person that is sitting here interviewing me on a podcast and the person that is sitting here being me in a podcast is separate but not separate from the being that is me that's answering the questions. And then what happens is the being that is you, that is separate, wants to love you. And that's actually the true definition of self-love, because when that higher self is able to reach you unobstructedly with the energy of love, since the universe is created by love and it's created by the building block of love, and love is in every molecule of the physicalized reality. Since that's the case, when we're operating from love, we're operating from the true creative building block. And so when your higher self, which is connected only to this sea of infinite love and possibilities and intelligence, is sending that energy down to your corporeal form, then it's actually lighting it up. That's what we refer to as alignment, is when we're able to receive from the higher self. And then when things are blocked, what's actually blocked is our connection to our higher self. And that's when things don't work so well. Check the news lately. So that's what happens when the whole world gets disconnected from that alignment, and it's going back into alignment.
Speaking of the news and the holidays is the other thing I wanted to bring up at this time, because even if our perception of angels is perhaps different than it actually is in that dimension, I feel as though much of the population wants to connect with that higher realm at this time, if for nothing else, because we're about to celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or, variety of holidays over these next couple of months. So is this the opportunity for the angels to go into action, or is there something sort of in the plasma aspects of the dimensions that enables these things to maybe connect a little more easily, more readily at this time?
Yes, well, and it's interesting because this particular holiday season, the nucleus of every one of those holidays is the light, and it is the power of the light. Whether you take the power of Hanukkah, which was the oil that outlasted what it should be, that was the power of the light and the miracle that created with the light. And you can trace that to every single holiday. And then in the Northern Hemisphere, this is when the days start to get longer. So it is a bit of the return to the light. And as above, so below, it's not just a coincidence that all of these indicate more availability of the light. Now, there is a whole lot of other stuff that's going on, which is a lot of very powerful frequency that we are being radiated with, calibrated with, whatever you want to say in that regard. But there is a beaming, you could say, of frequency that is expanding and becoming into higher vibration. And that's happening from the divine creator itself. It can use other forms, such as the central sun of the galaxy, the photon belt, the Schumann resonance, all of these different things, the blue light from the galactic center that people are talking about, all kinds of things that indicate that the creator, through earth, land, and sea, is attacking us with love and light and frequency. And so as we go into this, the best way that we can partake is to stay in that community and the peaceful state that we have from being one with each other. And I'm really seeing a beautiful trend of people putting aside what they feel divides them from other people and finding the unity again, which is very beautiful because there is no side to any discussion. There is only the unity of us all. And it's a perspective, and each perspective is a perspective, right? So the most valuable thing we can have is the unity and not the perspective, because that from there we can actually create the new earth. So with the holidays, this is a wonderful time to actually get into collaboration with the divine creator who's already radiating something beautiful into this realm in a myriad of ways. I even talk to people who are aware of, other technology from other, let's say, planets, which is possible.
We believe in
Um,
that.
yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, how can it not be? Right.
Right, exactly.
And it's cognitive dissonance that would cause us just to say, no, that can't be. Right.
Hmm.
And yet at the same time, it would make sense in the vast creativity of the creator and in the expansive time that this universe has been expanding and has existed. There has to be at some place an advanced species that has been around long enough, you know, to do whatever. I always think that they're the ones who created all the beautiful buildings that we see that humans don't build anymore. We see these beautiful buildings in Europe that have that, we call it that European architecture, with all of the angels and the columns and everything. And it's all over the world,
Hmm.
right? People talk about the Tartarians and all that kind of stuff. But I believe that these buildings, I'm in Brazil right now, and this place is full of those buildings, and they're not from the Portuguese. I believe that these buildings are from other species that, whether they're angelic species or another worldly species that was advanced that could build these buildings, because they're not something that we can build.
Right.
Clearly, because we'd be building buildings like that now or better. But there is an interesting plethora of ways that we're being bombarded with some beautiful energy that calibrates us. I want to share with you something that your audience can probably really relate to, because what this is, when we do this, it's like climbing a ladder. The ascension is a ladder, and it's a ladder of frequency variations or reality layers that are based on frequency variation. So we haven't been living in a continuous reality that runs a linear timeline, because linear time is not real. It's an illusion. But what happens is that each time we raise frequency, it's like we get in an elevator and go to a different floor.
Hmm.
And so when a miracle occurs, it's because it's like we stepped off onto a different floor where something was there that wasn't there before, or something of that variation.
Hmm.
And recently I had a really cool, by the way, it's 444 here in Brazil.
Oh.
I had this really cool experience that demonstrated this so that I can share it and people can get it. Okay. So recently I was in Sedona, and the parking sensors in my car were malfunctioning. And I thought, okay, well, when I get back to California, I'll get the car fixed, because there wasn't a BMW dealership in the area to go and get the car repaired. So it's like, okay, I'll just do that when I get back to California. And when I thought that, I heard the angels say, how would you like to use energy and consciousness and all that to create, the solution here? And I said, sure, why not? And then a few days later, a friend of mine who lives in Phoenix had a situation that was difficult and challenging. And I dropped everything, drove 2.5 hours to Phoenix to be with this person and be part of that solution. And it's funny, when we get to do things that are of expanded awareness, have you ever noticed how you get sort of consciously drunk or consciously high? Especially when you have a high frequency conversation with other people, you
Hmm.
feel the expansion in your mind, and then you feel changed. You feel like you're different, and now reality is different because you perceive it differently. Well, actually, what happens is that reality is different because you have actually taken offline the lower variation and brought online a new one, sort of like rebooting your
Oh.
phone with a new iOS. So after I helped my friend or empowered her and did so with the angels and got into that expansive space, I was going out to my car and I was like, ooh, I just took a quantum leap into a new reality variation. I turned on my car, I backed it out of the driveway, and the parking sensors have been working properly ever since then. And I was like, whoa, what just happened here? And the angels said that when we quantum leap through frequency, and in this case, the key to doing that was the selfless act that went to be there with my friend. I behaved like the creator. And when we behave like the creator, we are radiating the highest frequency. And so the way that they explained it, they didn't repair my car, but that I entered into a reality variation where the parking sensors weren't malfunctioning to begin with. And the car's working fine since then. So that is how we shift. And so we're in a process right now where we're personally and globally, we keep taking down lower frequency variations after we learn what we're supposed to learn from it, or expand how we're supposed to expand. And then we're done with it. Poof, you're gone. And then we do this with frequency where we take the old one offline and we bring the new one online. And believe it or not, this is what the angels say is going to create the solution in the false construct sense, the geopolitical realm, where things appear to be wildly askew, just put it that way. And because they are wildly askew, but that also is the way or the catalyst for us to be very, very motivated to actually ditch the old frequency variation, because otherwise we would remain stuck in it. So we have this definite motivation to create momentum through these layers or the ladders, because that's what life was. It was a descension from the fullness of the universe for expansion and discovery and knowledge, and then making the journey back up into the fullness of being. And so each layer or variation layer is a step back into that perfected realm. That's why each layer that we go to has something that is in a more perfected form. And then something is in a more perfected form. This is where the anti-aging stuff is going to happen, because we're going to get to a frequency layer. It'll bounce a quarter off of our bodies, and just like when we were 19 or 20. But that's what's going to happen.
Right.
We will end up being in a reality. We're going to look at our bodies and go, hey, but not for some sort of vain sense, but because that would be where that aspect got perfected. And so our goal here is to keep increasing frequency. Each increase in frequency will either incrementally take us up the steps, or sometimes we have these quantum leaps, which are super fun.
Is there something that you do in your work to help people activate that quantum shift or that quantum grasp?
Well, first of all, I will say that to a certain degree, by listening to this episode, your audience has the opportunity to calibrate with that. And calibration is the key to all of this. And when I do one-on-one sessions, or when I teach classes, and when I do hypnotherapy with people, these are quantum leaps that people take. And I always tell people up front, I'm not doing the work. All I'm doing is holding a space. But because I have calibrated with a higher energy source to be an instrument or a vessel, when I work with somebody, I only open up to the source of that calibration, make it available to whomever, and then they're the ones who does the quantum leap. But understanding that what we want that comes through from doing this work, and it's not really work, but connection or calibration, that it is all calibration, and realizing that gives us access to the frequency codes. And this is where the codes come from. Sometimes the angels tell me, oh, hey, go and, like when I did the tarot cards, when I printed a deck of tarot cards, when I created a deck of tarot cards, so like, create this deck of tarot cards, there will be an embedded frequency in it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then people order the cards and they receive them and they're like, they don't even open them. And they say, oh my gosh, I can feel the codes in here, the frequency. And people will come and do classes. I teach an initiation level of communication with the angels, but it's not an initiation level. It is actually more intermediate, and it's for all levels. But when people come in and take this, there's a calibration that happens. And by the second week, people come in and they say, oh my gosh, I see an increase in synchronicity and an increase in guidance. but holy jumping Jupiter, the miracles that happen, right? And this is why, and this is what your audience is going to enjoy, because the way that I teach angelic communication is I actually calibrate people into connectivity with the quantum field. And when we calibrate connectivity through the quantum field, through not only the lesson, but the assignment that I give in the first lesson, then what happens is by being calibrated, the miracles through the alignment is naturally inevitable. Because when the angels first guided me to do this class, I said, okay, we'll do this. And then when all these miracles started happening, I said, wait a second, you didn't tell me that this was a miracles class. And they said, what happened when you first started talking to us? The miracles went through the roof. It's just a natural byproduct of opening up the communication to that higher realm, or opening up the connection to the quantum field. And that's why when we do hypnosis, for example, I've had people come in and had frozen communication with someone, and it was painful because there was a soul agreement there, but the other person wouldn't reciprocate so that they could work through it. So they would go, into hypnosis, find that person's higher self, and make discoveries. One time someone made a discovery that the other person had been abused by a parent, and that was part of the reason why all this stuff got triggered. And when this person left the office, went to the car, guess what happened? The text came from that person. I'm really sorry. Can we talk? Followed by the revelation. You don't know this, but I was sexually abused by my father. And that came through in the hypnosis. I've had people who have seen certain things, and then that shows up in their reality. I personally have been in there, and like I worked with an angel with a certain name, and then the very next with certain characteristics. And the next day I'll think I'm picking up my Starbucks cup and it'll have that angel's name. And the person will come and take the cup from me and embody the same characteristics and almost look like that angel that came to me in hypnosis. So people get to connect with their angels or the information that's there. But what happens is it's a calibration. And then we get to bring what I call the souvenirs back, which is the power and these wonderful miracles and things that happen, which is super fun to be part of that magic.
I know you're going to have to jump very soon to go to your live event, but I want to be sure that we mention what's potentially going on for the next year. So I think 2023 will look like a snooze compared to what's about to come in 2024, but I could be wrong. So I'm curious if there's a viewpoint that you'd like to share about that.
Absolutely. Number one is that for those of us who have been activated consciously, that is just going to expand. Mm-hmm. And the miracles and the power that we have to create reality, not just our personal one, but to influence the betterment of the human condition, is going to be off the charts. Mm-hmm. So you get a choice of what you get to focus on. You can either watch the news and get deluged by that. It's intended to disempower us. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or you can take your power back because it's really available right now. Yes, we will see some magnificent events, and I'm not saying whether that's good or bad, but they're magnificent because they will be large-scale events that are part of this purification phase. And as we see those events, we're going to see things that will reveal themselves in a way that will bring us all together like never before, and to find a way of actually being one and creating a different reality. It's already happening, by the way. There are already other people who are creating ways to design a new monetary system for when this one collapses, and it will. Because it's built in such a way that it does have a limited lifespan, and its lifespan is over. And there are already people who are bringing through ideas. So it's going to be a powerful phase. It's going to be like two different ones. So it's going to be like, which one are you on? Are you going to be on the lower vibration one, or are you going to be on the higher vibration one? And the higher vibration one is purely from frequency.
I'm excited.
Yes. Let's stay in touch through this. And I'm happy to come back and speak to the audience at any time through this forum, anytime you want to have me back. and really dive into this as we go through in a way of navigating, because it's a wonderful way. If that is something that appeals to the audience, I'm happy to bring what they're saying into the conversation.
Yeah, sharing the love is always good.
Yes.
Lexi, did I miss anything?
Nope, I'm good. I'm blissed out.
That's what happens
that's
when
so
we
cool.
calibrate. That means that we calibrated during this, and the audience gets to benefit, which is amazing.
Will you share, Seph, how people can get in touch with you, what classes you're doing right now? I know you have a live event on Instagram, I believe, right? In a few seconds.
In 3 minutes, yeah.
Okay.
Well, just go to my website, talktomyangels.com. Talktomyangels.com. From there, I have created a community where you can meet like minds. There's no paywall. We do a couple of events a month. One of them is called Expansive Conversations, where you get to meet in a Zoom call with other amazing people. The other event that we do is monthly intention setting. And from there, the community members are starting to connect with each other from all over the world. From my site, you can also book personal sessions if you'd like to speak to me or do hypnosis or readings. And then the classes are coming up. They're going to be relaunched again in the new year. And so there is a space where you can express interest in being on the wait list and know about classes that are coming available. And then there's a contact form as well. If you want to just drop a line and say, hey, I feel good, thank you, or whatever. And in the meantime, I'm sending lots of love to you guys, to the audience, and big, 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 big waves of energy. I love that you're blissed out and blessed out, Lexi.
I really am. I'm feeling good. Complete 180 from where I was this morning. I was definitely in my lower, just the mood, and you can really see how in any given moment, we have a choice to be in the higher frequency or the lower frequency, and we may have to calibrate several times a day.
We absolutely do. No truer words have been spoken. That is good that you got to go through that and share that with us. Lots of love to you both. And I mean,
thank you so much.
Thank you, Seph.
Thank you.
See you soon. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Soul Fam podcast. Be sure to tune in to every episode where we dive into a different rabbit hole of the known and unknown to empower you in conscious living and exploration of the greater universe. We hope you leave each episode with a little stardust in your hair and inspiration in your heart. With love from your Soul Fam.